After selling my company for $32 million, I hosted a grand party. Just as the music quieted for my toast, I caught my daughter-in-law slipping something into my glass. Without a word, I switched drinks with her father. Minutes later, he clutched his chest, gasping, and the room went silent. My entire life, I dreamed of this moment. The sale of my company, 32 years of blood, sweat, and relentless dedication, finally culminating in $32 million and the sweet taste of freedom. But that dream, that hard-won victory, was almost ripped away from me, not by a business rival, but by my own son, and a woman whose smile hid a chilling, deadly secret. The ink was barely dry on the contracts, still wet with the promise of a new life. $32 million. Freedom. Retirement. A new chapter. My hand still gripped the pen when the mahogany desk exploded under Dennis's fist. Crash, I jumped. $5 million. That's what I need, and I need it now. I looked up stunned. He didn't even congratulate me. This was the biggest day of my life, and he was marching into my office, demanding money, his eyes gleaming with something I'd never seen before. Greed, raw, undisguised hunger. Now you can help your son. Wendy, his wife, stood by the door, her gaze as sharp and calculating as a predator, shifting between Dennis and the contracts on my desk. A subtle nod when Dennis looked her way, a silent signal I almost missed. I managed to say, "You didn't even congratulate me. This is the biggest day of my life." He leaned forward, palms flat on the desk, that awful hunger in his eyes. "I'm congratulating you now. $32 million is incredible. So, what's $5 million to you?" "It's nothing. Nothing. Nothing." I'd started King Technologies in this very room when Dennis was barely walking. Worked 18-hour days, missed school plays and baseball games, built something from scratch while raising him alone after his mother died. My heart ached with the memory. "Dennis, you have no idea what this money represents," I told him, gathering the contracts protectively. "This is my security, my retirement. I've earned this." His voice cracked like a teenager, though he was 38. "And I'm your son. I deserve something for all those years you were working instead of being a father." That accusation hit me like a splash of ice water. Wendy stepped closer, her voice honey-sweet, dripping with insincerity. "Maybe we could discuss this more calmly. Dennis just thinks it would be wonderful if you could help us get started." Started? Dennis had been getting started for 15 years. Different jobs, different schemes, always needing money. And since marrying Wendy 3 years ago, those needs had grown exponentially. I stood, tucking the contracts into my desk drawer. "Come to the party tomorrow night. Bring Wendy's parents. We'll celebrate properly. I'll explain my plans for retirement. Maybe discuss how I can help you both responsibly." Responsibly? Dennis's laugh was bitter. "You mean like a loan with terms and interest?" "I mean like family who cares about each other's future." Wendy whispered something in his ear. His face hardened instantly. "If you don't help us now, don't expect to be sitting at your party. And don't expect us for Sunday dinners or holidays either." The threat hung in the air, thick and poisonous. I watched my son transform into someone I barely recognized. The boy who sat on my lap, dreaming of joining the company, was gone. "That would be your choice, not mine." I kept my voice steady, though my heart was breaking. "The party starts at 7. Your decision." He slammed his fist on the desk again, harder this time. A coffee mug jumped and spilled across quarterly reports. "You're making a mistake, old man. Where's your family? We deserve that money more than some savings account." Wendy placed her hand on his arm, but her eyes never left mine. "Come on, honey. Let's give your father time to think about what really matters." They walked out together, Dennis rigid with anger, Wendy's heels clicking, her voice a low, urgent murmur in the hall. Planning mode. The front door slammed hard enough to rattle the windows. Through my blinds, I watched Dennis rev his BMW unnecessarily loud before peeling out. Wendy was already on her phone. I sank back into my chair, staring at the coffee stains spreading across reports I'd never need again. 30 years of building something meaningful, and my own son saw it as nothing more than a lottery ticket with his name on it. The contracts felt heavier when I pulled them out again. $32 million. More money than I'd ever dreamed of as a young father, working in this cramped home office, Dennis sleeping upstairs in his racing car bed. Where had I gone wrong? When had my son learned to see family as leverage instead of love? The phone rang, jolting me. Jim Patterson, my oldest friend and business rival for 30 years. Lester, I heard the news. $32 million. You magnificent devil. Jim's laughter filled the office. I suppose you're having a celebration tomorrow night at 7? Can you and Martha make it? Wouldn't miss it for the world. This calls for champagne. Real champagne. After hanging up, I felt slightly steadier. Real friends understood. I called the catering company Elegant Events. This is Lester King. I need everything perfect for tomorrow night's party. 50 guests, cocktails, and dinner. Money is no object. This is the most important celebration of my life. I confirmed details, then called my attorney. By Halloween, I'd be officially retired, wealthier than I'd ever imagined. The house felt different without Dennis's angry energy poisoning the air. Quieter. I opened a bottle of wine. Nothing fancy, just something to mark the moment properly. My phone buzzed. Dennis. I let it ring. 2 more calls. Then a text. Dad, we need to talk. This is important. Important to whom? Everything was important to Dennis when money was involved. Credit card bills, car payments, investment schemes that never panned out. But my achievements, my dreams? Never urgent enough. The wine tasted better than expensive champagne. I'd earned every sip. Dennis wanted to waltz in and claim a windfall he'd played no part in creating. Another text. Wendy's parents want to meet you before the party. Can we come by around 6 o'clock tomorrow? Homer and my Thompson, retired teacher and homemaker from Wisconsin. Had they been briefed? Were they part of Wendy's strategy? My reflection stared back, older than I felt. 65 years old, finally successful, and my only child saw me as an ATM. The wine bottle was half empty when I made my decision. Tomorrow's party would happen exactly as planned. Friends who genuinely cared would celebrate with me. If Dennis chose to stay away, that would reveal everything I needed to know about his priorities. Upstairs, I looked at the guest list. 28 confirmed attendees so far. People who'd supported King Technologies through thick and thin. Dennis's name wasn't on it. I hadn't added it because I'd assumed family would come automatically. Maybe it was time to stop assuming anything about my son. I lifted a family photo from the mantel. Dennis at 10, gap-toothed grin, standing beside me at the ribbon cutting for our first real office. His small hand gripping mine with absolute trust. Admiration shining in his eyes. When had that admiration curdled into entitlement? Wendy. I recalled their wedding. She'd approached me, champagne flute in hand, a calculating smile. I hope you know how lucky you are to have Dennis, she'd said. He's going to accomplish amazing things with the right support. Right support. Code for money, I realized now. Within 6 months, Dennis's financial requests had doubled. Wendy's influence wrapped around him like expensive perfume. My phone buzzed again. This time I answered without checking the ID. Dad. Dennis's voice carried none of today's aggression. Look, maybe we got off on the wrong foot earlier. Maybe I was excited about your success. Sometimes I express things poorly. A pause. Wendy thinks we should all sit down tomorrow before the party. Her parents are driving in specifically to meet you properly. Wendy thinks, not Dennis thinks. The distinction mattered. Your Thompsons are welcome tomorrow night, I said carefully, along with everyone else celebrating this milestone. But Dad, we really need to discuss the financial situation privately first as a family. Financial situation, as if my retirement planning was their emergency. Dennis, I'm not discussing money with you again until you demonstrate some basic respect for what I've accomplished. Congratulations would be a good start. I did congratulate you. No, you demanded payment. Very different things. Silence. Finally, Dennis sighed. Fine. Congratulations on selling the company, Dad. I'm proud of what you built. The words sounded rehearsed, probably coached by Wendy, but I heard something genuine underneath. Maybe a trace of the boy who used to bring me crayon drawings. Thank you. That means more than you know. I softened my tone. The party starts at 7 o'clock. Cocktails in the living room. Dinner at 8 o'clock. Dress nicely. This is important to me. We'll be there. Another pause. Dad, I really am sorry about earlier. The money talk. That wasn't how I meant to handle things. Hanging up, I felt cautiously optimistic. Maybe Dennis could separate himself from Wendy's influence. Maybe family bonds could overcome financial greed. I checked party preparations. Susan from Elegant Events confirmed everything. 47 guests now. The wine cellar yielded treasures. A 1982 Bordeaux from the year King Technologies was incorporated, real French champagne. Tonight called for the finest everything. In my study, I arranged the sale contracts in a leather portfolio. Some guests would want to see the actual documents, understand the scope of what I'd achieved. $32 million represented more than money. It was validation. Outside my window, the neighborhood settled into evening. Normal families living normal lives. Yet here I sat alone with my triumph, wondering why victory felt hollow when your only child saw it as opportunity rather than achievement. Tomorrow would tell the story. Either Dennis would remember how to be my son, or I'd finally understand that some relationships couldn't be forced. The contracts felt warm under my fingertips as I closed the portfolio. $32 million, freedom, independence, the power to choose who deserved my generosity and who had already revealed their true nature. For the first time all day, I smiled without reservation. The alarm jolted me awake at 8 sharp. Saturday morning, sunlight streaming through curtains, promising perfect weather. My first thought wasn't about Dennis's apology. It was about the 27 confirmed guests who deserved an unforgettable evening. Coffee brewing, I spread my checklist across the kitchen table. Flowers, wine, fresh oysters, imported cheeses. Everything had to be perfect. Downtown, Vincent at Romano's Fine Spirits greeted me. Mr. King, congratulations. His genuine enthusiasm was a balm. Vincent, I need your finest bottles for tonight's retirement celebration. Price is truly no object. My friends supported me for 30 years. They deserve champagne that costs more than most cars. 2 cases of Dom Ringo 1996. For bottles of Chateau Margaux 1995. Vincent loaded my trunk like it held crown jewels. $3,000 in 20 minutes, and I felt lighter with each purchase. At Delcois Delicatessen, Marcel, the owner, personally selected each item. Retirement after building an empire. This calls for our finest everything. Back home, controlled chaos. Susan's catering team had transformed my terrace into a magazine spread. White linens, crystal glasses, soft lighting, jazz at conversation volume. Mr. King, your approval on the appetizers? Sarah, Susan's assistant, gestured to displays too beautiful to eat. Crab cakes, chocolate-dipped strawberries. Each bite represented years of sacrifice, finally paying dividends of pure pleasure. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. I arranged personal touches, family photos showing my journey, the signed contracts displayed in my study. The afternoon flew by. By 4 o'clock, I stood on my terrace, surveying the transformation. Elegant tables. A gleaming bar. Soft music. This was what $32 million could buy. Not just financial security, but the power to create beauty, to share joy among people who'd earned their place at the table through loyalty and genuine affection. Dennis had demanded $5 million for personal debts. But this demonstrated how wealth should be used. 3 hours until the first guests arrived. Time for a shower, fresh clothes, and final preparations for the evening that would mark my transition from entrepreneur to gentleman of leisure. The contracts sat in their leather portfolio, waiting to be shared with friends who would understand their significance, not as lottery tickets, but as proof that dreams pursued with determination could indeed come true. The doorbell's first chime. Jim and Martha Patterson. Lester, you magnificent devil. I still can't believe you pulled off that sale. Jim's bear hug nearly lifted me off my feet. Martha's warm smile carried 30 years of friendship. The house looks absolutely stunning. Leading them through my transformed home felt like showing off a masterpiece. The terrace drew gasps. Vincent's finest champagne demands a proper toast later, I announced. Soon, cars filled my driveway. Frank Morrison from the bank, still sharp at 72. Dr. Sarah Chin, who'd kept me healthy through countless stressful deals. My neighbors, the Costellos. $32 million. Frank whistled low. Remember when you couldn't qualify for a $50,000 line of credit? You've earned every penny, Sarah added. Those 18-hour days finally paid dividends. Each arrival brought fresh waves of congratulations. Stories of late-night calls, smaller victories, lean years. The Richardsons from 3 houses down approached with genuine small-town pride. We always knew you'd make it big, Lester. You've been such an inspiration. You never forgot to give back, Mrs. Richardson added. That comment stung pleasantly. I had given back. Scholarships, community programs, quiet help for families, real generosity, not demanded handouts. By 6:30, 28 guests circulated, conversations flowing like fine wine. Retirement plans, travel dreams, investment strategies. These people understood that wealth carried responsibility. The sale timing was brilliant, observed Mike Torres, my former lawyer. Pure luck, I demurred, though we both knew better. 30 years of careful positioning had created that opportunity. Catering staff moved seamlessly, glasses full, appetizers replenished. Every detail clicked into place. This was how success should be celebrated, with gratitude, dignity, and people who'd supported the journey. Standing near the garden fountain, watching animated faces glow in candlelight, I felt complete satisfaction. Real friends appreciated effort over entitlement. They celebrated achievement instead of demanding shares. Martha Patterson approached. You look happier than I've seen you in years, Lester. Retirement suits me already, I smiled, raising my glass. The evening's magic was building toward my planned toast. Then, headlights swept across my driveway. A familiar BMW. My hand tightened around the champagne flute. Dennis emerged from the driver's side, followed by Wendy in an elegant black dress. From the back seat came 2 older figures, her parents. Excuse me, I murmured to Martha, setting down my glass. Walking toward my front door, I caught fragments of party conversation, warm laughter, clinking glasses, the comfortable sounds of genuine celebration. Dennis stood on the porch with practiced humility. Wendy beside him, holding a small wrapped box. Dad. His voice lacked yesterday's aggressive demand. I owe you a massive apology for yesterday's behavior. Homer Thompson stepped forward, silver-haired and dignified. Lester, congratulations on your well-deserved retirement. Dennis told us about this wonderful celebration. We're so grateful you included us, I added, her warmth immediately genuine. You've always been generous to our family. But my attention stayed fixed on Dennis. His eyes met mine directly, something that hadn't happened yesterday. I was completely out of line. His words seemed rehearsed, but felt sincere. Your success should be celebrated, not exploited. I've been under tremendous stress with work, but that's no excuse for my behavior. Wendy moved closer, her smile perfectly calibrated. Lester, Dennis felt terrible all night. We brought a small gift to show our appreciation for including us. The box felt substantial. You built something incredible over 30 years, Dennis continued. I'm proud to be your son, and I should have said that first yesterday instead of. He gestured helplessly. Standing there in my doorway, surrounded by the sounds of friends celebrating, I felt the sharp edges of yesterday's hurt beginning to soften. Maybe Dennis could separate himself from Wendy's pressure. Maybe family relationships could survive financial stress. Thank you for coming. I stepped aside, gesturing them into my transformed home. The party's just getting started. Homer whistled appreciatively. Dennis wasn't exaggerating about your beautiful home. This is magnificent. Leading them toward the terrace, cautious optimism replaced disappointment. Lester, your decorations are absolutely stunning. Wendy's compliments seemed genuine. What an amazing way to celebrate your achievement. My friends welcomed the family arrivals with warmth. Jim Patterson shook hands enthusiastically with Homer. Martha engaged Everyone, I'd like you to meet my son Dennis and his wife Wendy, plus Wendy's parents, Homer and my Thompson. The introduction felt natural, healing and invisible wound. Dennis moved through introductions with grace, asking thoughtful questions. No mention of money. Your father's been an inspiration to our entire community, Mrs. Richardson told Dennis warmly. He never forgot to help others. That sounds exactly like Dad, Dennis replied, glancing my way with what looked like authentic admiration. Wendy positioned herself near the bar, charming the catering staff, offering to help refresh drinks. Her social skills impressed even my most discerning friends. She asked intelligent questions about retirement planning, showed genuine interest in family stories, played the perfect supportive daughter-in-law. We should add chairs for the family, I told Susan's assistant, who quickly arranged additional seating at the main table. The party atmosphere shifted, more complete. Standing back near the garden fountain, I watched this perfect scene unfold. Friends and family mingling naturally. Meaningful conversations. This is exactly what I hoped for, I murmured to myself, watching Dennis laugh genuinely at one of Jim's anecdotes. Maybe yesterday's conflict had been necessary, a clearing of air before true reconciliation. Maybe family bonds were stronger than momentary greed. Leading Dennis and his family toward the main seating area felt like completing a perfect picture. Dad, you should tell everyone about that European river cruise you're planning. Dennis's enthusiasm seemed infectious. First stop after the sale finalizes completely, I confirmed, accepting a fresh glass of wine from Dennis. Scotland, then Ireland, maybe Scandinavia. 30 years of 12-hour days earned you every mile, Sarah added warmly. Wendy moved gracefully, playing the perfect daughter-in-law. Sarah, Lester has told us so much about your friendship, Wendy said. Dennis and I feel so grateful to be part of this celebration tonight. Family celebrations are the best kind, Sarah replied. This is exactly how success should be honored. Dennis caught my eye, raised his glass slightly, a son's salute to his father's achievement. Whatever stress had driven his desperate money demand seemed resolved. I can't believe I almost missed celebrating this incredible accomplishment, Dennis told Jim. My father built this company from absolutely nothing. Pure determination and vision. The pride in his voice sounded authentic, not the calculated flattery from yesterday. Homer raised his wine glass. Lester, 35 years teaching showed me what dedication looks like. But building a company from scratch, that's remarkable resilience. The hardest part was believing it would work when everyone said technology consulting was too competitive, I reflected. Persistence pays dividends, but it takes decades to see results. I nodded thoughtfully. Wendy always said you were an inspiration, working so hard while raising Dennis alone after your wife passed. The comment touched something deep. These people understood sacrifice in ways Dennis had seemed to forget yesterday. Tonight felt like validation. This terrace setup is absolutely stunning, Wendy complimented. You have such sophisticated taste. Everything looks magazine perfect. Susan's catering team deserves the credit, I admitted, though I did insist on personal touches. Family photos, the wine selection, flowers from my mother's favorite shop. Details matter. Wendy agreed. Memories should be beautiful. As twilight deepened, garden lights twinkled. The party reached that perfect rhythm. Dennis moved effortlessly, sharing stories about my generosity, expressing gratitude for childhood lessons. The son I remembered had returned. Your father sponsored computer camps for underprivileged kids every summer, Dennis told the Richardsons. I helped when I was old enough. He never publicized it. Just believed technology education could change lives. Such moments reminded me why family reconciliation mattered more than money. My phone buzzed insistently. My attorney's office. Excuse me, everyone, I announced, glancing around the perfect party scene. I need to take this call about some closing details. Please continue enjoying yourselves. Walking through the French doors into my living room, I pressed the phone to my ear, positioning myself by the large window overlooking the terrace. The caller was Harold Peterson, my closing attorney. Lester, sorry to interrupt, but the buyer's bank needs confirmation on the wire transfer timing. Of course, Harold. Monday morning works perfectly. Through the window, I could see my guests. The party flowed beautifully. Dennis was engaging Jim and Frank in what looked like serious business discussion. His hands gestured enthusiastically. Even from this distance, I saw the respect on their faces. I appreciate you handling these final details personally, Harold. This sale means everything to my retirement plans. Wendy moved casually toward the drink refreshment area, appearing to help maintain hosting duties. Such thoughtfulness. She was proving herself the ideal daughter-in-law. The buyer is impressed with your operational documentation, Harold continued. They're confident about the transition. Something caught my peripheral vision. Wendy had paused beside the drink table, her back to most of the guests. Her hand moved to her pocket, retrieving something small. That's excellent news, Harold. My words died. I watched Wendy's movements closely. She palmed something tiny, a small packet or envelope, while glancing around to ensure no one was watching. Then, with practiced smoothness, she moved her hand over my wine glass. My breath stopped. A fine powder fell from the packet into my drink. Quick, deliberate, unmistakable. Lester, are you still there? Harold asked. Yes, I'm here. My voice sounded distant even to myself. Wendy was stirring my wine glass with a cocktail stirrer, dispersing whatever she'd added. Should we schedule a final call before the wire transfer Monday? Wendy pocketed the empty packet and stirrer, then moved away from the table with the same casual grace. No one else had noticed. The guests remained absorbed, completely unaware that someone had just poisoned my drink. Harold, I'm sorry, but something urgent has come up here. My hand trembled slightly, holding the phone. Can we finalize everything first thing Monday morning? Of course. Enjoy your celebration, Lester. You've earned it. Through the window, I watched Wendy rejoin the main conversation, her smile bright and natural. She positioned herself where she could observe the drink table. My mind raced. The reconciliation, the apologies, the perfect daughter-in-law performance, all calculated manipulation leading to this moment. They weren't here to celebrate my success. They were here to ensure I didn't live to enjoy it. Dennis seemed genuinely unaware, still engaged in animated conversation with Jim. His reformation appeared authentic, which meant Wendy was operating without his knowledge. She'd used his legitimate guilt over yesterday's confrontation as cover for her own deadly plan. The wine glass sat innocently on the table. One sip would be enough. Whatever poison she'd used was likely fast-acting, designed to mimic a heart attack or stroke, a wealthy 65-year-old man celebrating with alcohol. Who would question a sudden medical emergency? But she'd made one critical mistake. She hadn't realized I was watching. Taking a deep breath, I straightened my shoulders. The game had changed completely, but I held the advantage now. Wendy thought she was executing a perfect murder. Instead, she just revealed herself as the enemy I needed to defeat. Time to turn the tables on my would-be killer. Stepping back onto the terrace, I maintained the same warm smile I'd worn all evening, though my heart hammered against my ribs. Wendy glanced up, her eyes immediately tracking toward the drink table where my poisoned wine waited. Everything settled with the closing details, she asked with perfect innocence. Just some final paperwork formalities, I replied, moving naturally toward my usual position. Nothing that can't wait until Monday morning. The poison was invisible, odorless, probably tasteless. Professional grade. But Wendy had underestimated her target. I'd survived 30 years in competitive business by staying 3 moves ahead of people trying to destroy me. Lester, shouldn't we have a proper toast to your retirement? Wendy's suggestion carried subtle urgency. Everyone's been waiting to officially celebrate your success. Jim nodded enthusiastically. Absolutely. This moment deserves champagne and speeches. This seems like the perfect moment, with family and friends together, Wendy continued, building momentum. Your wine glass is right there, ready for the toast. She was pushing toward the poisoning's execution with calculated pressure, disguised as party enthusiasm. Every word designed to get that glass to my lips quickly. Excellent idea. I agreed readily. But first, Dennis and Wendy, could you help me with something in the kitchen? I want to get that special bottle of Dom Perignon we discussed, the 1996 vintage, and the good crystal champagne flutes for the proper ceremony. Dennis straightened with obvious pleasure at being included. Of course, Dad, you know where everything's stored better than we do. This will make the toast even more special, I added, making the request sound important emphasizing host-like family involvement. As they headed inside, I turned to Homer with practiced casualness. Homer, how are you adjusting to retirement from teaching? 35 years in education, that's remarkable dedication. Homer's eyes lit up. Well, the transition has been fascinating. After 3 decades of September schedules, I'm still adjusting to flexible time. While he spoke, gesturing expressively, I moved closer to the drink table. Homer's wine glass sat inches from mine. Similar shape, identical red wine, close enough for a quick exchange. Have you and my thought about traveling? I continued, keeping him engaged while scanning guest positions. Jim was deep in conversation with Frank. Sarah and I discussed garden planning. No one was watching the drink table. Oh yes, we've been planning a trip to visit national parks, Homer continued enthusiastically. Yellowstone first, then maybe the Grand Canyon. In one smooth motion, I switched the glasses. Homer's untainted wine moved to my usual position. My poisoned glass shifted to a spot. The exchange took 3 seconds and looked like natural table rearrangement during conversation. That sounds wonderful. The western parks are spectacular this time of year, I replied, stepping slightly away from the table as Homer continued his story. My pulse gradually steadied as the immediate danger passed. Wendy's poison now waited in Homer's glass instead of mine. The sweet irony of using her own father as an unknowing shield felt perfectly appropriate. Dennis and Wendy emerged from the kitchen carrying the Dom Perignon and crystal flutes, faces bright with anticipation. Everything's ready for the proper toast, Dennis announced. Wendy's gaze immediately moved to the drink table, confirming my wine glass remained in position. Her satisfied smile revealed complete confidence. Perfect timing, I declared, moving toward my switched glass, watching Wendy's expectant face. Let's make this toast memorable. She positioned herself to observe my drinking, eager to witness the poison's effects. Her father sat beside his deadly glass, completely unaware that his daughter had just tried to murder his host, using him as an unwitting accomplice. Everyone, please gather around, I called out, raising the glass that should have killed me. The irony was exquisite. Wendy thought she was watching her victim approach death when she'd actually just set up her own father for the fate she'd intended for me. Time for the evening's real entertainment to begin. Everyone gathered expectantly around the elegantly set table, glasses raised. Candlelight danced on crystal. Friends and family united in celebration. The soft evening air carried the promise of new beginnings. Friends, this truly is the most meaningful evening of my life. I stood confidently, commanding attention, internally preparing for the drama about to unfold. 30 years of building something from nothing, and here I am, surrounded by people who matter. Wendy positioned herself with a clear view of my wine glass, her eyes bright with anticipation. She had no idea her carefully planned murder was about to become her public downfall. Your friendship and support have made this success possible, I continued, scanning faces that had supported me through decades of struggle. Tonight, I want to talk about loyalty, about trust, about what family really means. The shift in my tone caught some attention. Jim raised an eyebrow, sensing something different. I've learned that not everyone who claims to love you actually does. My gaze moved deliberately toward Wendy, whose confident smile faltered slightly. Some people see success and think only of what they can take from it. Dennis leaned forward, confused by the growing tension. Guests exchanged glances, uncertain where this was heading. Unfortunately, not everyone here tonight shares that genuine affection. I paused, letting the weight of my words settle over the silent gathering. In fact, someone at this very table tried to poison me just minutes ago. Shocked gasps rippled through the crowd. Wendy's face went white, her eyes starting between me and the drink table as she tried to process how her plan had gone wrong. Homer, stop, I shouted as he raised his wine glass toward his lips. Don't drink that wine. It contains poison. Homer froze mid-motion, the glass trembling inches from his mouth. Around the table, guests recoiled in horror, several setting down their own drinks in alarm. What are you talking about? Dennis stood up, his voice cracking with confusion. Dad, what's going on, Wendy? Wendy, I turned to face her directly, my voice carrying the authority of absolute certainty. Would you like to explain what you put in my wine glass? I saw you add something from a small packet while I was taking that phone call inside. That's absolutely ridiculous. Wendy's voice pitched higher with panic. Why would I poison anyone? This is insane. But her face betrayed everything. The color draining from her cheeks, her hands trembling as she gripped the back of her chair, her eyes calculating escape routes. You looked around to make sure no one was watching. I continued relentlessly. You stirred it in, then pocketed the evidence immediately afterward. Dennis stared at his wife with growing horror. Wendy, tell him he's wrong. Tell everyone this is some kind of mistake. Of course, it's a mistake, she snapped, but her voice carried desperation now. Lester, you must have seen something else. I was just helping with the drinks. Homer still held the poisoned glass, staring at it with dawning understanding of how close he'd come to death. Mike clutched his arm, tears streaming down her face. Fine, I said calmly. Let's settle this scientifically. We'll take that wine to a laboratory for analysis. If I'm wrong, I'll apologize publicly. If I'm right, I reached toward Homer's glass. This will prove attempted murder. Let me just secure this evidence. Wendy lunged forward with sudden desperation, her calculated facade cracking completely. You can't. She stumbled against the table leg with theatrical clumsiness, her hand striking the wine glass. Crystal shattered against stone. Red wine splashed across the terrace. Evidence destroyed in one accidental moment. Oh no! Wendy gasped, her performance unconvincing. I'm so clumsy. I'm so sorry. The silence that followed was deafening. Even Dennis stared at his wife with undisguised suspicion. How convenient. I said quietly, and everyone understood exactly what they'd witnessed. The shattered glass caught candlelight like scattered diamonds. Wendy knelt beside the mess, making a show of trying to clean up while avoiding everyone's accusatory stares. That was no accident, Wendy. I stood over her, my voice carrying the weight of absolute judgment. You destroyed the evidence because you knew exactly what that laboratory analysis would reveal. I don't have to listen to these wild accusations. She shot to her feet, her composure finally cracking completely. Mascara streaked down her cheeks as panic replaced calculation. This is ridiculous. Dennis, are you going to let him talk about me this way? But Dennis was staring at his wife with dawning recognition. The money demanded yesterday. You pushed me to ask for $5 million. You said we deserved it immediately. You needed help with your debts. Wendy snapped, then caught herself, revealing too much. What debts? Homer asked quietly, his voice heavy with disappointment. Wendy, what have you done? Jim stepped forward, his lawyer instincts engaged. Lester, what exactly did you witness? I saw her add powder from a small packet into my wine glass while I was on the phone. She stirred it in, looked around to ensure no one noticed, then pocketed the evidence. I gestured toward the broken glass. When I offered laboratory testing, she immediately destroyed the proof. Sarah nodded grimly. The timing of that accident was remarkably convenient. Wendy's eyes darted between the faces surrounding her. Guess who moments before had welcomed her warmly, now looking at her with disgust and suspicion. Even Dennis was stepping back, creating physical distance as emotional distance grew. We don't have to stay here and be insulted. She grabbed her purse, her movements sharp with desperation. Dennis, we're leaving now. Wendy, wait. Dennis looked torn, but the evidence was overwhelming. Maybe we should explain. There's nothing to explain because I didn't do anything wrong. But her voice carried the shrill edge of trapped guilt. Come on, we're going home. She stalked toward the house, her high heels clicking angrily. Dennis followed reluctantly, glancing back with an expression of confused shame. Dad, I don't know what to say. The truth would be a good start, I replied, but not unkindly. When you're ready to hear it. Homer and Mai remained frozen by the drink table, their faces etched with heartbreak and humiliation. Party guests murmured, processing the dramatic revelation that had shattered what should have been a perfect celebration. Car doors slammed with finality. An engine roared to life, revved unnecessarily loud in an expression of frustrated rage. Tires squealed as Dennis's BMW disappeared into the night, carrying away the criminals who had tried to destroy my retirement before it began. But Homer and I stayed behind, their shoulders bowed with shame, facing the wreckage of what they believed was their daughter's happy marriage to a successful man. The broken glass crunched under my feet as I moved to comfort them. Because unlike their daughter, these were good people caught in circumstances beyond their control. "I'm so sorry," Homer whispered, his voice breaking. We had no idea she was capable of something like this. Justice had been served, but now came the harder task of healing the wounds that betrayal always leaves behind. Silence stretched across the terrace like a heavy blanket. Broken glass sparkled among scattered drops of poison wine, evidence of the betrayal that had nearly destroyed everything. Homer stood motionless, still processing how close he'd come to death at his own daughter's hands. I dabbed her eyes, her quiet sobs carrying decades of parental heartbreak. "We are so deeply sorry, Lester." Homer's voice trembled with shame and gratitude. "You saved my life tonight. We failed as parents somehow. This is our responsibility." "Homer, look at me." I moved closer, placing a gentle hand on the older man's shoulder. "This is not your fault. You are good, decent people. Wendy made her own choices. But we must have missed something," I whispered. "Some sign that she could do such a terrible thing." "Evil sometimes wears a perfect mask," Sarah said softly, joining our small circle. None of us suspected her true nature until tonight. Jim approached with a small brush and dustpan, already helping clean up. "Lester, your quick thinking saved Homer's life. How did you figure out what was happening?" "Pure chance," I admitted. I was by the window taking a business call when I saw her add something to my wine. At first, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. "You handled that situation with incredible grace," Frank Morrison added. Most people would have panicked or confronted her immediately. Other guests gradually joined our conversation, their initial shock transforming into admiration. "I keep thinking about how she encouraged that toast," Martha Patterson observed with a shudder. "She was eager to watch you drink poison." "But she underestimated Lester's intelligence," Dr. Chin replied. "And now Homer and I are safe. That's what matters most." Homer raised his new glass toward me, his hand steadier now. "To a man who proved that good can triumph over evil, even within families." "To Lester," the group echoed, their voices carrying genuine warmth and respect. But I raised my own glass toward Homer and I instead. "To people who show grace under impossible circumstances. Homer and I, you're welcome in my life always. Tonight taught me the difference between family you're born with and family you choose." My tears shifted from sadness to gratitude. "We don't deserve your kindness after what our daughter tried to do." "Your daughter's choices reflect her character, not yours," I replied firmly. "You stayed when she ran. You faced truth when she chose lies. That tells me everything I need to know about your hearts." As the evening progressed, conversations gradually returned to celebration. The attempted murder became a story of justice served, friendship proven, and wisdom rewarded. Homer shared memories of my generosity over the years, painting a picture of consistent character that made Wendy's betrayal even more shocking. "You sponsored those computer camps every summer," Homer told the other guests. "Never wanted credit. Just believed technology education could change lives." "That's the Lester we know," Jim confirmed. Success never changed his values. By 10 o'clock, the last guests were departing, promising to stay connected during my retirement. Homer and I insisted on helping with final cleanup, their way of contributing something positive after their daughter's destructive act. Standing on my terrace as they finished clearing tables, I surveyed the scene of my triumph. Justice had been served without legal complications. An innocent man had been protected. Toxic relationships had been severed cleanly. Most importantly, my retirement was beginning with absolute clarity about which relationships deserved my time and which people had earned their place in my chosen family. The contracts for my $32 million sale sat safely in my study, waiting to fund adventures with people who valued me for reasons beyond money. Tomorrow would bring new possibilities, free from manipulation and false loyalty. Tonight had proven that wisdom, patience, and quick thinking could defeat even the most calculated evil. And sometimes, the best revenge was simply letting criminals expose themselves to everyone who mattered.